This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, our weekend show is all about the two of us, each nominating what we think is the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable story, the sleeper story, so one that's maybe not getting the attention that it deserves, or, in my case this week, one that we feel may become a much bigger story a little bit further down the track. And then we also pick out our favourite story. And of course, we need an adjudicator. We need someone to decide on a winner. And every week, that adjudicator is our Fear and Greed colleague, Adam Lang. Adam, good morning.
Good morning, Michael, and good morning, Sean. I have to say, I always enjoy this particular part of our week, but today I've got more anticipation than normal. I'm a little bit excited.
Any particular reason for that?
No, not yet. I've just got a feeling it's going to be a good one.
Oh, really?
Well, I have brought my A game, if that's a...
I've brought my C game, and that might be enough.
He's taunted.
God, you started early. Let's go. What's the biggest story for you this week, Sean?
I reckon it was this stock exchange. It's having a great run. It's trading less than 4% below its 52-week high, even though rates are rising and people are worried about a recession. It's around 4% below its all-time high that was hit back in August 2021 during the somewhat premature post-COVID celebration. Some of the big sectors, the banks, for example, aren't doing so well. But more recently, this week, the big miners shifted higher, as did the gold stocks. That's because there's a bunch of big deals going on globally, not the least being Newmont's revised $30 billion bid for Aussie gold digger Newcrest. Some of the big winners of last year, the coal miners, the lithium plays, have really come off the boil, but other sectors have performed much better. Healthcare, for example. Technology, wow, amazing run. There's also been some great one-off performances. Corporate Travel Management won a $3 billion contract in the United Kingdom this week. Its share price jumped 12% on the day. Then there's the stocks trading close enough to record levels. Telstra, WiseTech Global, QBE is another one that fits into that. We have a very, very resilient market, and shareholders, which is pretty much every single person listening to this podcast via their super funds, have benefited. So I think this is the week to really point out just how well the markets run. Michael.
Oh, sorry, that was the end. Well, good story. Large story. Biggest story? No. The biggest story this week, Sean, which also happens to be the most important story for me this week, was a global story with a bit of a local focus, so quite a strong local focus. So I'm kind of covering every base here. The International Monetary Fund downgraded its forecast for the Australian economy, predicting it will expand by 1.6% this year, down from the previous estimate of 1.9%.
Heart is racing at this point. My heart is racing. Go on.
You know what? I don't know if you can hear this.
Oh, gloves are off.
Oh, good Lord.
I am taking off my combat cardigan. I told you I was bringing my A game. I am going economics. This is big, because the thing is, it is a globally significant story, because the IMF is pretty downbeat, and they have said that while the economy has been pretty resilient over the last few years, it is still grappling with a combination of weak growth and, I love this term, sticky inflation. The global growth expectations for the medium term, the IMF released this week, were the weakest in more than 30 years. That is significant. And importantly, crucially, it says that it expects inflation globally to stay higher for longer. Having said that, inflation data out of the US this week was pretty good, but don't expect the Fed to stop hiking rates just yet. And locally, we've got the jobs market booming, and so pressure's being put once again on the Reserve Bank to keep lifting rates, and which is great, obviously, if you've got a job or if you're looking for one. Not so good if you have got a mortgage, struggling to make ends meet in this cost of living crisis. That's not all. There is more. There was more big news. The IMF just kept on delivering this week. They and Adam, I know that you would be particularly interested in this one. They urged Australia to expand consumption taxes like the GST to help repair the budget deficit. The IMF said that Australia should shift to more indirect taxes for both efficiency and revenue reasons. And Adam, I'm sure you will be very disappointed to know that Treasurer Jim Chalmers has already rejected the idea. It just seems there isn't much appetite, tragically, Adam, for meaningful tax reform. Plenty of distractions, though, in Canberra at the moment. So he's probably kind of thinking about other things because he just looks across the House at the moment and sees the Liberal Party just tearing itself apart over the decision to oppose the voice referendum, with the Shadow Attorney General, Julian Leeser, quitting Shadow Cabinet this week so he can campaign for a yes vote from the backbench. Peter Dutton is in for a tough few months, but really, it's all about the economy, and it's all about the IMF and growth forecasts and rejected suggestions for tax reform. You put it all together, which I have done elegantly, I would say.
Have you ever seen a bigger omnibus story in your life, Adam? We started with global economic projections from the IMF, and we ended up with Julian Leeser, the backbencher, now a backbencher. Excellent work, eloquent, broad-ranging stories.
Oddly held together.
I'd say clinging rather than held, clinging together.
There was no interruptions. There were no interjections. There were plenty of opportunities for protests throughout. I left considerate kind of pauses there so that if you had something to say, you could chime in. So you know what? I think you've missed the chance to protest, Sean. And I just say, Adam, bring on the judgment.
Very, very difficult. Sean, your story, it is remarkable that the stock exchange is only 4% off its record high. That's the ASX, of course. Now, what we've seen in recent times is business confidence has been pretty strong, consumer confidence has been poor. But in the most recent data, consumer confidence got a little bit less worse. So is it a case, business tends to be full of optimists because that's why they're in business, because they believe they can grow. Is this a case of business confidence gradually leading consumer confidence into a better place? And that's why we're seeing resilience in the stock market.
That's exactly what I was trying to say.
I heard you, Sean.
Sean, do you find yourself taking notes when Adam is doing this? Because it suddenly gives an insight into the judging criteria. Suddenly he's adding all of this extra information and you're like, oh, okay,
That's
maybe
right.
I'll include that.
It gives an insight into my own story that I hadn't thought of.
Sorry, Adam, we interrupt.
Yeah.
No, I think it is remarkable and it's a huge story. Now, with Michael, yours, normally yours is a mix of very important political stories that have impact over the short, medium and long term. And this is one of those weeks. So, in between the IMF calling for tax reform, amen, and the political elements that flowed out through The Voice, they're all big stories. So I have to call this one a dead heat. It's even for you both. No winner here, both sets of big stories.
I'd like to think of it more as no losers here, Adam.
Okay.
No losers here.
That's
Oh,
good.
no, I feel like a bit of a loser. I put everything I had into that story. I thought if I can't win the first story, then all like.
Did you front load your stories, Michael?
Oh God, yes. I put every single story I could find this week into one category, thinking that, hey,
Still wasn't enough.
may I tell you why I did this? Oh, now I feel like I should have left the cardigan on. There was no point taking it off. I got this message through the week from Mia, a most enthusiastic advocate, which is our acronym, our title that we award to people. And her name is Shalise. And she contacted us via Instagram, and it was a very direct message to me in that it still came through Fear and Greed. It says, "Hey, Michael." She must know that I'm the only one that knows how to access Instagram. She said, "Hey, Michael, you know how you like to give some unsolicited feedback to brands at times?" Which is true, I do. And she said, "In advance of the weekend show, do you mind if I do the same?" Like, please go on. Said, "As a listener who never misses an episode and who feels as strongly about the importance of politics and political news as you clearly do, I hope I speak for everyone when I say it pains me to hear you lose week in and week out to Sean's same inflation and the economy response. Please," she said, "either try to find a more quantifiable impact to the political news on the economy or change tact entirely, particularly in the week when new inflation data is out. Adam is never going to side with you and us, the people. Kind regards, Mia."
I love
She
it.
signed it off as Mia, as in most enthusiastic advocate. So I thought,
Oh, she's brilliant.
and you know what? I went into that feeling like I was carrying the hopes of a nation. I felt like Kathy Freeman in 2000 just then.
Rounding into the straight in the 400.
Except in this particular one, Kathy Freeman finishes in a dead heat. Yeah, it's just, I'm sorry, Shalise. I've let you down. I've let myself down. I've let the people down.
But Shalise hasn't. She is what a great Mia. In fact, she's a Mia of the week.
Oh, absolutely. I just thought, I was so buoyed by that encouragement that I thought, I've got this. I'm going to win it for Shalise. I'm going to win it for my fans.
Shalise, if you're going to follow someone like Michael, you're going to end up with disappointment. And I suppose it's just something that you've got to keep in mind.
Most remarkable story. What was it, Sean?
Well, how about you go first on this one?
I've got very worked up right now. I'm sweating. I'm glad I took the cardigan off. I discovered also midway through that rant that my pants were undone. So, God, I'm just fully disheveled at the moment. I'm just all over the place. Most remarkable story. There were two remarkable courtroom dramas out of the US, and both of them with big business, big ramifications. Some of them are business, some of them are not. Some of them are just fascinating. We'll start with the less significant, and to even describe this as the less significant of the two is remarkable because it is still pretty big. We had former US President Donald Trump launching a $500 million lawsuit against his former attorney, Michael Cohen. Trump claims that Cohen spread embarrassing or detrimental lies about him. No coincidence, of course, that it all happens just after public statements by Michael Cohen helped form the basis of this month's criminal indictment of Donald Trump. Now, this is big money. There is big money involved here. $500 million in this matter, $250 million in a civil fraud suit against Mr. Trump by the New York Attorney General. Remarkable, but Donald Trump in court is rapidly becoming less remarkable, especially when you consider the spectacle that we are in for in the next week or so. Rupert Murdoch expected to be a witness in the defamation suit against Fox, brought by Dominion Voting Systems. Background to this one very quickly, the Fox network made claims, incorrectly obviously, that Dominion's voting machines were rigged to favour Joe Biden. They weren't. Dominion is suing for defamation. And what is extraordinary about this one is the fact that this week, one of the most powerful people in the world was told that he couldn't avoid giving evidence and would be subpoenaed if need be. So stand by for Rupert Murdoch to be in the witness stand. It may just be a fascinating insight into the way a modern, very controversial media company operates and just how influential a network like Fox is. I will be very excited to see it. I suspect I won't be the only one, and it is by far the most remarkable story of the week. Sean.
My most remarkable story is the fact that a record 2.6 million passports were printed last year, and there's still 2 million to be renewed. Now, we found out this week that the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade said applications are continuing to pour in at a rate 25% above pre-COVID levels. Now, the Passport Office has made significant inroads and waiting times have come down from 6 weeks to 10 days. Yeah. None of us believe you on that one. I can tell you from personal experience, some passports took much longer than 6 weeks last year. Anyway, if you do some maths, you'll work out that the passport was producing around 13,000 passports each working day last year. That's remarkable. Where do you get the printers for that? Particularly because the paper is so hard and stuff like that. Anyway, I just think it's remarkable. 2.6 million passports in a year.
So, remarkable story of the week. Bloody good stories, gentlemen. Sean, your travelling story. We love travelling, Australians. We love it. And probably more so than most countries in the world.
Just like I was saying, yep, go on.
So it's really important to us. On top of that, when we got locked down, I think our thoughts about travel extended even more because even when we can't do it, we want to consider it even more. And it's something that's terrible to be restricted from. And all of those backlogs of passports were just part of that story. It was fascinating and evocative of the last few years. On the other hand, out of America, two remarkable stories. Donald Trump countersuing. He's just such a ringleader of a circus, Donald Trump. That isn't so remarkable to me. It was almost like just waiting for him to come out with that one. But Rupert Murdoch appearing in the docs is really, really interesting. I have to say, though, on economic impact to Australians, Sean, you win Remarkable Story of the Week.
I did not have a chance in that show.
In fact, you got 2.6 million people who are disaffected.
I'm with you, Adam. Excellent decision. Well, I'm going to, can I be generous here?
Yeah.
And man of the people, Michael, you can have Rupert Murdoch when he actually appears next week. Because that will be remarkable.
I don't need your charity, Sean.
I'm not so sure about that.
It is, what is it? 1.5 to half?
1.5 to half. Yes, it is.
You know what that sounds like to me? Sounds like I'm still in this.
You are.
Michael. Absolutely.
Keep the cardigan off.
Yes, we will be back in a moment with the sleeper story of the week. All right, Sean, we are looking for the sleeper story.
Oh, look, listeners, I'm sorry. We have to explain what's just happened. Last week in the break, we heard Michael come out and say, this is BS. This week, we went to the break and the first words Adam and I hear are, this is a freaking train wreck.
That was more of a reflection on my case this week. So I was so confident that I was going to take this out in the first round, and then everything would just. I'd pictured you just being crushed, Sean. That you would have just no spirit left, and then I would just cruise through to like a 4-0 or maybe a 3-1 victory. And so suddenly it's me. I am the one that's crushed, and I am the one that's behind the wheel of this train wreck. Do trains have steering wheels? I don't know. Okay. Terrible analogy. Sleeper story of the week. Sean, you go first.
Right. Well, mine actually is a sleeper story. It really is, because even though many people are part of this story, tens of thousands of people are part of this story, the vast majority don't realise it. The ATO, the tax office, ran an experiment or a trial this week. It provided 2 types of letters to 20,000 Australians who owed money, changing just a few words here and there. The idea was, in the tax office word, to nudge people into paying their tax. What they discovered was being tough was better. So 2 different messages were printed at the top of the letters sent out. One soft message said, don't get further behind, lodge now. Oh, why did I do that in that voice? I don't know. The hard message told recipients that not taking action to get up to date will be treated as a deliberate choice. Within a month, 13% of those who had received the soft message letter lodged their tax return. For those sent a deliberate choice letter, the lodgement rate was 17%, almost a third higher. Now, every year, the ATO handles about 43 million tax returns and business activity statements. A quarter of them are not completed on time. The difference between 13% and 17% equates to huge numbers. This has gone on. We found out about it this week, but no one knows. In fact, you may never know. You'll just receive a letter from the tax office saying pay up in a nice way or a nasty way, probably a nasty way in the future. And that's why it's the sleeper story of the week. Fascinating.
Look, my sleeper story this week, it's a big story. Surprise, surprise, in the US. I've gone very international this week, which has clearly worked. And it's a big story in the US, but the reason I've included it as a sleeper story is because it could end up being a fairly significant story here. It could become a bigger issue here, because this week the Biden administration unveiled a major push to reduce emissions, focusing on the transportation sector, which is the biggest emitter in the US. Under the most extreme of these recommendations by the EPA, 67% of all new car and kind of light truck sales could be electric by 2032. That's less than a decade away, and we're talking 67%. At the moment, only 7% of new car registrations in the States are EVs. So there's clearly a long way to go from 7 to kind of 67%. Plus, they've also got new rules coming for power plants and things too. So the reason, as I said, that it's a sleeper story for us is because remember a few weeks ago we had the warning from the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change that more action, deeper, much deeper, more decisive, stronger action was required if we were going to hit our emissions targets. Well, who do you think our government may look to see what's working, to the US and to Europe. And under these proposals, the US may actually then have the toughest rules in the world. The US will actually leapfrog Europe in terms of having the toughest vehicle rules in the world for a while. And so it's not out of the realms of possibility that we could see something similar happen here. At the same time, this week we were talking about in Australia how Tesla has slipped back a bit in the rankings of new car sales. EV sales were up, I think, 20% on the same month last year, but we are a nation of ute buyers. The biggest sellers in Australia are still the utes, the Hilux and the Ford Ranger and the Isuzu D-Max, the top three vehicles. You put it all together, and what it says is that we have a very long way to go on this, but maybe, just maybe, a global precedent has been set here this week for extreme action against conventionally fueled vehicles, and it may well kind of trickle down to Australia. And that's why I say watch this space. This is a true sleeper story. Adam.
Both very good stories. The nerd in me loves the fact that the ATO is using data and different forms of communication and getting results. I think that's terrific and has billions of dollars of impact. Internationally, though, this vehicle story out of the US, we don't have a vehicle manufacturing industry in Australia anymore. So all the cars and vehicles we buy are from overseas. US is the biggest economy in the world. And so that has a huge impact on leading the world in terms of its trends. So I think this will actually be a huge economic story internationally and also in Australia. So, Michael, I'm going to give this one to you on the sleeper story of the week.
Oh, thank you, Adam.
There is no way in the world I should have lost that one, and there is no way in the world you should have lost the most remarkable. So I think the lesson is that category 4 is really the one that matters.
Subjective bias in my judging. Yeah,
it's why it's just it really just
very left field at times, Adam. Very left field.
Adam, I know that you love data. If you were to analyze the data for every weekend edition we've ever done, would it be possible to pick a trend at all in your judgments?
No.
I don't think there would be. Like that's
well, in my head, you can. It's all economic impact.
So it's economic impact. That is the
What has to be? We're
biggest.
A business news show. So it has to be about business impact. I call it economic impact.
Tax returns?
Yeah, economic impact. I would have thought that a full story about the economy would have been anyway.
Which one was that, Michael? Oh, you mean your grab bag of politics and the IMF at the beginning?
I tossed a little bit of politics in there at the end, just so that we didn't get complaints going, "Oh, you ignored politics for the week." I'm like, no, I didn't ignore it. I just didn't know. I knew Sean wasn't going to cover it, so I had to take one for the team. This is the reward I get for being selfless. God.
Pants are off. Again, the cardigan's unzipped. Let's go.
Okay, settle the rage. I'm going to channel it all into my final story. Am I going first on this one, Sean?
Yeah, you go for it.
Okay, look, no surprises at all that my favorite story is about space from this week. And it is about everything that we learnt this week from space. Because we learnt this week that because everything in space is like satellites, etc., is electric, then it's pretty much a blueprint for how we electrify everything on Earth too, and which is obviously then a key step towards reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which is vital to economic prosperity into the future, Adam. Enrico Palermo, the boss of the Australian Space Agency, also said that space tends to offer a better risk-reward opportunity when it comes to companies kind of looking at new lithium deposits, etc., because space and spending on space is pretty resilient to economic downturns, which I thought was fascinating that he said this, that countries and companies essentially just keep sending more satellites up there, so they need more lithium and the like to ensure they can operate. Fascinating. The other big news this week.
Oh, here we go. Yes.
Is all about Uranus, Sean. The James Webb Telescope sent back the most incredible pictures showing the ring around the planet, its moons, etc. And look it up if you haven't seen it. Just obviously be careful what you Google. My favorite line was from New Scientist magazine, and it's reference to Uranus and its dusty ring.
No one is helping you out here, Michael. No one.
Silence.
I will just leave that there for you both to consider. And I will finish on a serious note. I'm mindful of what Adam has said about economic importance and impact and significance being vital to securing victory. And I did quite a bit of research this week and learnt a lot about Australia's space industry. And it is actually quite impressive. It is small, but it is growing. It's growing at an annual rate of 7.1%. The government aims to grow it to be worth $12 billion by 2030, another 20,000 people to be working in the industry. So it's not insignificant. It is obviously particularly relevant to a business podcast. And Adam, it shows how something as big, as grand, as truly infinite as space can be brought right back down to a quantifiable contribution to the Australian economy. So for that reason, and for every other reason I listed, including Uranus, this is my favourite story of the week, and I'm sure, Adam, it is also your favourite story of the week. And Sean, probably yours too.
My favourite story is, well, in fact, there's a bunch of stories, not quite the omnibus of yours, Michael, but it was the run of stories around collectibles and the incredible value in things like tequila and sneakers. A new record price was paid this week for a car license plate, $15 million US in Dubai. That smashed the record set in the United Arab Emirates more than a decade ago. It was well above the $3.2 million US for the number plate sold in Hong Kong earlier in the year. So this $15 million US number plate simply had P7 on it. And that's it, just P7. Then there was a Michael Jordan shoe sold this week, a pair of MJ signed Nike Air Jordan trainers sold for a record $2.2 million US in an online auction. Now, the basketball great played in them in the final series of the 1998 World Series, which isn't a World Series at all. But anyway, his team, the Chicago Bulls, won. It was the end of the second of his three-peat, so it's his sixth title. We also had eBay's State of Collectibles report for 2023 here in Australia. It reckons there may be 5 million collectors in Australia hoarding things from coins and Lego sets to sneakers and art, and most collectors want to make money out of it. Watches and handbags are the most expensive collectibles, though the prize for the most overpriced memorabilia, again, goes to a Michael Jordan product. It's an autographed first championship 1991 commemorative card that someone in New South Wales paid $100,000 for. Finally, we had a great interview this week with Stefan von Imhoff from Alts.co, who basically they're an alternative investor and they look for real alternatives. We're not talking about property or infrastructure here. We're talking about tequila and we're talking about sneakers and things like that. If you haven't heard it, go back and listen. It is a great chat about how you can invest in all sorts of things and make money from it. So, putting all that together, the interview with Stefan and the run of stories that seems to have Michael Jordan all over it, my favourite story of the week. Adam.
That's a really good story, Sean. I love people's fascination with different things and collectibles, and who knows what's going to have value. And here we have all these years later, these incredible collections going for vast sums of money. So there's favourite elements and economic impact in that one. I have to give this one to Michael, though. The impact of space, I love space too. And as a massive Star Wars, Star Trek fan, electric and renewable power in space and its growing impact as an industry in our economy here in Australia as well as internationally, but also leading the way on how we power the things we need in our lives. It has to win for me, this one, for space.
Well done, Michael. Well done.
Oh, thank you. I was
Shalise will be happy.
Oh, yes. Yeah. It's been very unexpected. And I suspect I may have still let her down a little bit with my lead story. But you know what? I came through. And that's really what counts. What was the score overall, Adam?
All right, Michael. We have 92 points for you and 91 points for Sean.
All right. Well, there we go. I think we're all very happy with that result. Good outcome for all. Australia's the winner here. And of course, just a very quick mention, the fact that you can stay up to date on all the business news with Alexa and your Amazon Echo smart speaker. Simply say, Alexa, play the Fear and Greed podcast to catch the latest episode. You can get yours now at amazon.com.au. Adam, you use an Alexa all the time, don't you?
Yeah, most days.
Easy to use, isn't it?
I just talk to it.
It doesn't give you the attitude that say, Sean and I do.
I wonder if we could program that.
What to have more sass?
You're enjoying this abuse, aren't you?
It's like a dangerous kind of path we're walking here at the moment. All right. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
And thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm Michael Thompson. Have a great weekend.